Everybody just take a breath, right? And breathe. I can only hear myself breathing. But I mean, I hope that you guys will continue taking breaths over the course of the day and all the other days, and you know, it's something that we like to do, right? If you don't, you'll die. So how would you feel if every breath you took was polluted and toxic? Today I'll be discussing the relevance of global warming, the attempts by some to downplay it, and what can be done about that. The destruction of the environment as a result of human activities is an urgent problem, and yet some who benefit from the status quo seek to dismiss it. Now I'm going to tell you about global warming. So ever since the onset of the Industrial Revolution, people started burning fossil fuels en masse and that kind of thing. That's really messed up the environment, put a lot more of that stuff into the air than we needed to. A lot of pollutants in the environment. And, basically, Industrial Revolution was like maybe 200 years ago, so when it started. What we have is the greenhouse effect, and then there's energy from the sun that comes down to the earth. And normally a lot of it gets bounced back into space. But because of the greenhouse effect and the all that stuff in the atmosphere, it never contains the heat. That's what the greenhouse effect is. Because I've heard people talk about the greenhouse effect all the time. I didn't know what they were saying until I read that. That happens because the atmosphere is very delicate and we're easily capable of changing its core components for burning fossil fuels. And we've changed it so much that by the year 1986, so like 20 years ago, I guess, the amount of CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere had gone up by 25% from what it had been before the Industrial Revolution. They usually measure that by taking core samples of ice. Kind of interesting. So now I'm going to tell you about the effects of global warming on the environment. Effects of global warming are no longer abstract projections. They're tangible. You don't have to be really imaginative to figure out what they are. One of the biggest warning signs of global warming is the state of the glaciers of the world. If you look around the world, there's places like Glacier National Park, those kind of things. There really aren't glaciers there anymore, almost. The glaciers of the Himalaya are badly affected by global warming, and they provide, I believe, 40% of the world and 50% of its water. And when they're gone, that means it's going to be pretty much a catastrophe. And in the far north, like in Siberia and Alaska, there's something called permafrost. It's permanently frozen soil. And since people have moved there, they've built their houses and structures on permafrost, and now the permafrost is melting in places like Siberia and Alaska. It's causing houses to collapse, apartment blocks, that kind of thing. People have to abandon their homes. They also have something called a phenomenon in Alaska called drunken trees, and these trees that grew in permafrost, now that it's melting, they start to lean over to the side. There's huge swaths of trees and woodlands that are like that now. And probably the most devastating part of the permafrost is that it's threatening the oil pipeline in Alaska. So despite the presence of devastating effects of global warming, there are those who seek to belittle the issue. Despite the evidence to the contrary, some deny that the effects and root causes of global warming are their own good. They deny mostly that it's caused by people. People like Rush Limbaugh, a radio show host, they've hosted scientists with dissenting opinions on the root causes of global warming. And those scientists are in a tiny minority in the scientific community, and they're oftentimes backed by oil and gas companies who want them to spread their message for their own good, which is questionable ethics there. And it's kind of insulting to intelligence too. I'll just tell you that. So it's important not to be sold on that kind of thing. And there are steps that we as individuals can take to prevent the destruction of our planet. Recycling is one. It's very easy to recycle. We have cans and plastic bottles. We use them for about 10 minutes, and then they go into a landfill, where they stay for years, many years. So if you recycle, it's pretty easy. I think now you can just put your recyclable stuff in a recycling bin. You can also use public transportation systems. You have buses, trains, subways. Don't really have much of that around here, but you have the bus, or you can walk, ride a bike. It's not that bad. And a lot of people seem to think of the green movement as like placing the responsibility for this global warming pollution on individuals rather than on governments and big companies. You could change faster and make a bigger effect. But, you know, it starts with people and then proliferate the ideas throughout society, that kind of thing. So I've talked about global warming, what's causing it, and what can be done about it. That's a good question.
I did. Who do we have? Taylor? Is that who's doing the... Yeah, Taylor, what did you think?
I thought the intro was okay. You at first looked like you were going to do a lot of reading, but then you stopped doing that. I thought you used good hand gestures pretty often. The only problem is that it kind of ended abruptly.
Yeah, I thought the introduction was interesting. You made a pretty good transition to what the topic was and your position. You have a good preview that's going on there. You follow the structure during the presentation pretty easily, so all the structural things are in pretty good shape. I think your material needs more citation. You kind of summarize what some of the information is on the subject, but you don't give us any source citations on, for instance, at one point you talked about how there's 25% more CO2 in the atmosphere than there was before the Industrial Revolution. Well, I know that you read that somewhere, but I don't get a citation on that. There's information about glaciers and their melting and projections about problems, and I don't get a citation on that. And the permafrost melting and the drunken trees. I like the example there. Where did you see that, or where are you reading about that? I think that you need to be a little bit more consistent in citing that material. The discussion of the problems with the dissenting opinions and the, I guess you would call it the counter-insurgency on global warming, I think that needs to be developed a little bit more. It's basically you've made a charge here about the bias or bias on the part of the critics of global warming theory and suggested that they are funded by oil companies, so we need some proof on that. Otherwise, it's just name-calling. On the delivery, again, you speak confidently, but you have that low-key demeanor that sometimes comes across as a little bored, and you don't want the audience to feel bored, so you're going to have to find some other ways to put some energy into your presentation. I didn't think your eye contact was nearly as consistent as Taylor did. I thought that it was very inconsistent, and the gestures were fine. It was a little short. It was 5 minutes, 23 seconds, give or take, so there's plenty of time to do some of the things that I'm asking you to do. All right, thank you.